Hello from Gardening at Dwensa here in Ireland, and I'm here once again with Roger, and today we're going to talk about dendrobiums.
This could take a while. Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. Got to get that in.
Well, as Roger said, thanks for dropping by, and we're here once again in my greenhouse. And now that I have Roger, I'm going to ask him some of those burning dendrobium questions that have been on my mind for some time. And as we all know, and those of us who follow Roger's channel know, that he's an absolute expert on the cold dendrobiums and manages them very well in an environment that many of us have at our disposal, i.e., well, he doesn't exactly have them in a house, but we can learn a lot from where he keeps his dendrobiums and apply them to a house situation. So, I suppose to kick off, the first question I'd like to ask Roger is, what is your absolute favourite dendrobium?
Unfortunately, it doesn't come into the set we're going to talk about, but my hercoglossum is my favourite dendrobium. And it's not the most spectacular, but there's just something about the blooms that, viewed from below with light, they're translucent. They glow.
And describe them. What colour are they?
They're a pink with a very dark purple centre. They're not even large blooms. They're probably they're less than 3 centimetres across. But they mass bloom, so you make up for size with numbers, and it blooms reliably. I've had it a long time, and this year it was in bloom. Started early with like a smattering, then it moved into its mass blooming. Where it was a spectacle this year, and then I had trailing blooms that have only just finished, like 3 or 4 weeks ago, so it was probably in bloom 3 months this year.
Wow.
On and off, with a mass bit in the middle, as it always does.
Fantastic. And how big is the plant? It's a hanging plant, isn't
yeah,
it?
it's a mounted orchid, and it has a growing style that's a bit unusual, because the canes grow for 3 years without a break.
Right.
So it's not a resting type, although in the books it says it is. Not in my grow room, it's not. Basically, the new growths come out late spring, and they'll grow maybe a foot in the first year, and they'll be upright.
Right.
But then it will carry on growing slowly through the winter, and the canes will get heavier, and the following year they will reach their full length, which is probably 2 feet, maybe a bit more, maybe 2.5 feet, and they still haven't finished growing. They still then grow slowly into the 3rd season. And then behind them, year by year, the leaves drop. And they take 2 years to drop. So they drop their back end leaves and keep it. And then eventually they become totally deciduous. But it's a 3-year cycle on that plant.
Wow.
Very unusual for a dendrobium.
And we started off by saying that we were going to talk about cold dendrobiums and dendrobium winter rest. But I think what you really need to do is to tune into Roger's channel, because you're going to bring people through a variety of different
I'm
cold
hoping this year
dendrobiums.
to do it. I mean, there's not a huge number of this category of dendrobiums in the collection, but those that are in that category that need to be slowed down and go into that, you can't really call it a dormancy, because they still get a bit of water and stuff, but they do stop growing eventually. And I hope to do it in stages, plant by plant. Like, how do you know when your plant's finished growing? Like, what is a terminal leaf and things like that. And the process, literally from just before that point, when it's still growing, to when it's completely stopped growing, reducing the feed down, and then eventually reducing the water down to a little, and not very often. But not this no water at all stuff, I don't do that.
Excellent. So for all these subtleties, you're going to have to tune into Roger's channel, particularly this autumn and winter, and see how he brings them through.
I think this will be the first year I've documented it properly.
Okay, and documented it for YouTube as well. So that's what we care about, really.
Yeah.
Okay, the second question I wanted to ask you is something that came up last night when we were having a chat, and it's to do with light intensity. Now, if you read the books, many of the books will talk about, a day and night length shortening as we go into autumn, and a lot of them will talk about a drop in temperature going into winter, which will trigger flowering in various different categories of orchids. However, one very important point that Roger pointed out recently was that the light intensity can be the most important thing perhaps in triggering flowering in certain dendrobiums.
It
Is that right?
seems to be, for me, the difference between the growing season's light and the light they get when they've gone semi-dormant and finished growing. And I believe it's that change. It certainly seems to be for the plants I've got. So it's not the actual light intensity, it's the difference between what they had when they were growing, and quite honestly they don't need a lot of light in the growing season. They're under leaf cover. They're
Right.
in the shade,
In their
really.
natural environment.
But come autumn, the leaves fall, and the light intensity becomes pretty dramatic. So, mine are going to get right up against the glass with no shading through the winter. They will get the maximum light I can give them. And it worked last winter. I see no reason why it won't work again. And I think that was one of the things that made my winter resting types bloom the way they did at the beginning of this year, which was pretty good.
So-
Best ever, I'll say.
So your tip really is to put them up against the glass, certain ones?
It's not so much how much light you're giving them in the winter, it's combined with reducing the amount of light in the summer, so the change is more dramatic.
Right.
I think it's the change that seems to trigger that, get those buds going. And I think that dramatic change is what's triggered the best blooming ever this spring. Maximum light compared with what they had before during the growing season.
Okay.
Along with the other stuff, the feeding, and
Along with the
watering,
other stuff.
and the temperature drop. There's many factors. So, but that one seems to have been the one that did the most good.
Right, and the one that's most often overlooked, I think.
And because the sun is so low in the sky in the winter, its strength has gone. So you don't need to worry about blooming. And a lot of those are deciduous dendrobiums anyway. As it goes into the autumn and moves into winter, they're going to dump their leaves anyway. So if there's none there, you can't burn them. You can't burn what isn't there. But not all of them are totally deciduous annually. Some of them are deciduous over a 2-year period. So into the next season, you will still have some of last year's leaves on some of the canes. So.
Very good, very good. And the other thing I wanted to ask you was, how long is it that you are growing dendrobiums? Now I understand you've been growing orchids for a long period of time.
Yes, but not the variety. The variety is, a lot of people don't realise, I've only actually had that grow room 4 years. So
Right.
with the variety and the size of the collection, that is quite recent.
And your first, was it the hercoglossum, was the first, let's say, colder deciduous dendrobium, although it's not quite in that
Yeah,
category?
I think the first dendrobium I ever got was a nobly hybrid. And I think then...
This is way back when, is it?
That would be as I moved the plants into the grow room. So
Oh,
it's
okay,
still
so
not
4
that,
years ago.
Yeah, still not that long ago. And then I got a few of the... come on, brain. More coffee, nurse. I think the next lot were the Phalaenopsis type dendrobiums because they're continuous growers, so they're easier to manage, quite honestly.
Yeah.
You just have to keep them the best you can through the winter because they're not in their ideal world in our winters because of the short days, but they need to stay warm. They don't need a chill to get the blooms as such. They're naturally going to get one in our UK winter in my grow room because the temperature is going to drop because the outside temperature has. And they drop lower than they should do, but they put up with it and they manage. They're not in their ideal comfort zone, but they work. And then it really expanded from there. And the type that I really struggled with, it was Terry, T.D. Moore, had some, and you, had some gorgeous Latoria types.
the
And I thought,
Latorias.
yeah, I
Oh,
thought,
they're quite different,
I've got to
aren't
get
they?
me some of those. And it took me 2 years before I got my first one. And then they seem to just suddenly pour out of the woodwork and suddenly, there's another one. So I've now got quite a few of those. And I like those as well because they're non-resting types. Quite honestly, they're easy to look after compared with some. But with the resting types, they came in not intentionally. I wasn't intentionally buying the resting type dendrobiums. In those days I got them and then worked out what I needed to do with them.
And worked out very well, I may
yeah,
add.
that's what I am, definitely the other way around. My mindset now is that plant looks quite nice. How long do the blooms last? Is it fragrant? What type is it? Will it fit in my grow room before I buy?
Yeah.
Whereas I used to be like many people, pretty blooms must have.
Yeah.
Where I don't do that very often now.
Well, it's very interesting about how you kind of tended to specialise in dendrobiums over the last time.
Yeah.
And interesting to hear that you're moving into, well, Laturia and other types.
Yeah.
But I guess it's an ongoing process, isn't it, for
Yeah,
all of us?
yeah.
Our tastes in orchids evolve.
And I've acquired inadvertently through the big box, which if you follow me, you know what the big box is all about. But quite a few
This
of
is
the
a big box of orchids he got given somebody's collection who decided for whatever reason not to keep it anymore. So just filling in.
And it had 20 plus orchids in it, many of which were dendrobiums I'd never heard of. So we had to get the
The research.
yeah,
out
let's
again.
look it out. And some of those are cold growing dendrobiums,
Okay.
so they're not going to do that well for me because of the heat in the summer, especially this summer, which was grim to say the least. But they're managing, they are growing, and one that I've been looking after for probably, when did that big box arrive? In the big freeze, so March I presume. And to all intents and purposes it's dead, and literally in the last couple of weeks it's pushing out a new growth.
Which one is this?
I can't even remember the name,
All right.
but it's just one that's been
One
sat there on its
particular-
mount, hanging down, looking very dead, and now it's just coming
It's
back
just
into
coming
life.
out.
There's an expression in the dendrobium world: never give up on a dendrobium.
And that's probably really good advice and a very good point to leave the video at. So as Roger says, never give up on a dendrobium. There you go. There
They
you
can
have it.
surprise you. They can just burst back into life from apparent, death. Basically, they look dead, and then
Yeah.
suddenly you'll see a new.
Because the
growth come out.
pseudobulbs can be so shriveled, you can't see
Yeah.
a decent root in sight.
But in even on shriveled pseudobulbs, there's still some energy in there. There might not be much, but if it can muster up enough to get a new growth up, you're back in business. Because if you can get that going, you will get the new roots, and then you've got a new plant. It won't look very good for a while.
But hopefully it'll start doing better and better. Okay, and I think that kind of that's brilliant. And thanks very much for coming along, Roger. It was wonderful having you
and
here.
I've had a wonderful time.
Have
I've
you?
Felt
Have you had
like
a
a
wonderful
member
time?
of the family, and been treated as such. It's brilliant.
Did you enjoy the board games?
Yes, yeah. Even though I didn't know what on earth was going on most of the time, but yeah, it was fun.
And you had some of the red stuff as well. So that's,
Yes,
that's always
yes.
good.
We had a glass or two, maybe.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to link once again to Roger's channel up above for anybody who doesn't know it. But that is, I guess, the last video from me and Roger together.
Yeah, we'll be on the bus soon off to the airport.
Yeah.
Big silver bird back home. And look out, if you're interested in the dendrobium world and worried about what's coming next because it's your first winter or something, keep your eye on my channel because there will be sequence videos this time on the same subject. I'm literally going to film them going through and coming out the other end.
And maybe put little text in there that people from outside might be able to search for the relevant information.
Yes,
on.
yeah.
That
I'm a bit
think-
lazy on getting the right words in my titles and description to enable people to get straight there, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
But yeah, we can do that and put plant names in the title and things.
So watch that space. Okay, thanks very much for checking by, or what is it? Thanks for
Thanks
dropping.
for dropping by. Yeah,
there you go.
And even though I'm in a totally different place, you're still dropping by.
And don't forget to subscribe to both Roger and my channel. Okay, that's all for now. Bye.
Bye.